Increasingly, we're hearing about the difficulties that businesses have with the housing affordability, because businesses need staff and employees and workers, and those workers need a good place to live, and they're increasingly struggling to find a place like that. So joining us for the forum now is the Executive Director of Business Illawarra, Adam Zarth. He's going to share his observations on the impact of that ever-growing problem so many businesses in the Business Illawarra organisation are facing. Business Illawarra is the region's peak business advocacy organisation. It represents all businesses and local business chambers right across the Illawarra, the Southern Highlands and the Shoalhaven. It's supported by its parent organisation, Business New South Wales. Its mission is to drive improved business and economic conditions underpinned by research and evidence. And today, Adam will share the views of the local business community and the challenges they face with so little housing affordability available and even in the pipeline in this region. So, Adam, thank you for joining us. It's an open forum. We'll keep an eye on the chat room. But Adam, maybe to kick things off, can you tell us about just how tough it is? What are your members telling you and your organisation about the current housing and the rental crisis in this region?
Thanks, Jeremy, and g'day everyone. Look, I just want to quickly start on indulgence. Look, this is a fantastic example of the sort of leadership by Michelle and the Housing Trust on this issue that won her Outstanding Business Leader at our awards on Friday. So congratulations again, Michelle. And thanks again for having me and for this important work. Look, fundamentally, as you said, Jeremy, our members want their staff to live close to work in affordable housing. If our mission's economic growth and creating local jobs, we need to have a workforce available in the region to fill those growing numbers of jobs. Yet when we surveyed our members recently, over 40% of them in the Illawarra said they're experiencing skills shortages. That was in September, and it's even worse in the Southern Highlands and the Shoalhaven, with over 50% of businesses in both those regions, respectively, which aligns, I think, with what the experience we're hearing from people on the ground. We're now hearing stories from members routinely unable to fill positions because even employees willing to relocate can't find anywhere to live nearby. Others, where you had, due to rental stress that I think has been adequately described by others, you've had employees who used to live 15 minutes away and now forced out, and they're coming 90 minutes to work. It's just unfeasible. There's a residential vacancy rate in Wollongong right now of 0.5%. And, it is a function of COVID. Wollongong experienced 8% year-on-year growth in regional migration, and that was back in March. Obviously, that would have continued. So we believe it's in our economic interest as a region that there be an adequate supply of affordable housing. It's also in government's interest to fix this, I'd add, which is because housing shortage can wreak havoc in all areas of government expenditure. So, for example, if hospitals can't access key workers, then healthcare suffers and costs increase. Clearly, what's happening here is the result of ongoing market failure, but unfortunately, we don't believe it's within the control of the market to solve the problem. Australia is one of the most expensive places on earth to own a home. We have 3 levels of government, all regulating the construction of new dwellings. And housing, as again others have discussed, represents the bulk of personal investment portfolios. I think somebody put a good comment in the chat. I'll go back and find it. Housing has shifted from shelter to investment. That was Jackie Forst. I would concur with that observation. Look, just to wrap up, we made a submission for what it was worth to the Regional Housing Task Force that was convened by the New South Wales government. Again, we've got one level of government there trying to solve a problem that really, unfortunately, requires multiple levels of government to come together. And we said, look, first up, we need some good quality data. That can be collected at a local government level so that we can understand the complex nature of the problem. And we can use that to better describe and better inform solutions. Secondly, there are no fit-for-purpose funding models that currently work in this space, certainly not following the great shift that followed COVID, and we need to look at innovative solutions. And I support Michelle's and Cher's work on that front. We need to look at alternative funding models and capital funding options like social bonds, frankly. And of course, the state governments regulatory frameworks are completely unsuitable to the changing social conditions we're seeing and to adapt. And we need to address that and make them far more flexible. And finally, where we are absolutely identifying social housing as needing to be part of the conversation, because we'll be risking greater government intervention down the track if we don't urgently get on with addressing this issue. So look, that's probably all I wanted to say. But again, we've thrown the challenge out to candidates for council in the first instance, which is how are you going to become an enabler rather than a regulator? I think more of a can-do attitude and less of the Dr. No approach is what's needed at a local government level, and that's the first point we want to address. So again, congratulations on the Great Advocacy Housing Trust and everybody showing an interest on this call today, and thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Adam. Just one quick question. We heard during the briefings to the candidates that Warragul, as an example, as a significant local employer, we're unable to expand the services to meet the needs of our ageing community. And in fact, they're almost having to shrink their services to provide rooms for some of their staff to have a roof over their head at night. Are we hearing from other organisations, not necessarily in aged care, that they can't ramp up and become the business they want to become because they either can't find the staff or those staff can't find a place in this region to live?
Well, Jeremy, in the interest of time, I'll just say the answer is yes. That's absolutely right. Across the aged care sector and also in disability services sector as well, predominantly, and as I mentioned, health. It's affecting the public health system as well. It's constraining those services to the most vulnerable people in our community.
Thank you very much, Adam. Keep your mic on. We're now going to go to that panel discussion. So we'll bring back Michelle, Michael and Adam. And I'd like to introduce now another industry expert, John Engler, who can provide a different perspective. Are you with us, John?
I am indeed, Jeremy. Good afternoon,
Great.
everyone.
John is the CEO of Shelter New South Wales. He's also recently been appointed as the National Chair, or the Chair of National Shelter. John is an expert of urban and regional planning. He joined Shelter New South Wales early last year, just before the pandemic, has been involved in the formation, development and operation of social, affordable and specialist housing for most of his professional life. And so welcome, John, joining the panel. Thanks to all the other key presenters for staying with us. We've got some great questions on the chat room. I might go to one of those, and then if someone else wants to chime in live, we'd love that as well. But great question from Bill. Why does council need to sell land and relinquish ownership? Why can't it do what happens, I guess, in the ACT and change to allow 99-year leases and rely on capital growth for their profit component? I don't know, John, if you want to take that, or someone else on the panel.
I'm happy to start with that one. The short answer is, Jeremy, and thank you very much, Bill, for your question. The short answer is they certainly can. There's lots of examples where, not just 99-year, 3, 5, 10, 49, 50. There's all sorts of lease arrangements. So the commercial application of land and its most efficient use should be brought to this spectrum, should be brought to this arena. It makes complete sense. We've seen lots of good examples of it. So I think it's a great question, and you're absolutely right. Innovative councils, indeed it happens overseas, and you're right, in the ACT and other jurisdictions, leasing land allows you a couple of things: ultimate control, but also to put conditions on the land while the lease continues. So in short, great idea. It brings the commercial lens to what has effectively been a very skewed residential area. It's a great idea.
I think we've got Terry now who's going to ask a question live. Terry, I think it's around about superannuation.
Well, thanks, Jeremy. It's just good to see you again. It's a long time. Sorry, that's my IT skills. I didn't want to ask it directly, but it's a fact that a lot of superannuation funds are now entering into affordable housing. I just wondered if the Housing Trust had made inquiries along those lines.
Thanks, Terry. We certainly have. My first, in fact, when I joined the Housing Trust, I was still on the board of what was then local government super. So yes, absolutely. The APRA regulations and the thresholds for return, and in fact, new superannuation legislation, which requires all super funds to be able to prove that they're maximising their members' benefits, could actually be counterproductive in some ways. We believe, and in fact, I was working on a global task force that was looking at it. The sad reality is today, I've got more chance of being able to attract investment capital from the Canadian Teachers Credit Union than I do from the New South Wales Teachers Credit Union. And certainly it is an avenue of capital that will be unlocked. We have to find a way of doing it. We are moving closer. Forgive me for some of you that what I'm about to say might go a bit over your head, but we are moving closer. At the moment, one of the regulatory conditions is that there's no distinction between residential housing and social and affordable housing. It's all just considered residential, which means it's somewhat speculative. We know that the prices have gone up in the last little while. They're going to come back down again to a greater or lesser extent. So what a number of us are working on is to have social and affordable housing formally recognised as social infrastructure, and to have it classified as an investment class exactly the same way as schools, roads, hospitals, and other public infrastructure. And that's another part of the solution.
Thanks very much, Michelle. We've got another live question from Blake. We've got limited land availability in the region, but there is still some good, solid rural land. Blake, over to you.
Oh, hey everyone. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, I was just, I've been sort of working on over the last year or so. I'm a licensed builder from the Shoalhaven, and I've been working on innovative solutions that we can provide sort of affordable and social housing outcomes in the Shoalhaven, sort of exclusively to the locals that live in the area. And one of the ideas that I was working on is, obviously partnering with land developers to allocate a certain amount of lots, for example, as either rental properties or as shared equity home ownership. But another option would be to potentially work with the New South Wales planning authorities as well as local councils to rezone rural land exclusively for the supply of affordable housing to locals in their communities. Because, as I can't remember who it was, but someone in the panel mentioned that it doesn't matter how many homes that you build, if they're still getting sold and rented at the current prices, there's no guarantees that we can help people like Lynn get into their house more affordably. So, one of the options is anybody seriously discussing potential rezone, because that's a way that you can really cut the cost of property by about $100,000 to $200,000 per block of land, which you could trap in a shared equity model, whether it's through home ownership or just reducing the capital cost of rental properties. And then obviously this could be regulated through a CHP, so the affordability component remains affordable in perpetuity. Is there any serious discussions about that?
Great question, Blake.
Yeah, love the way you think. Couldn't agree with you more. It's collaborative, it's smart, it is about enabling ownership, which of course is something that we all aspire to. Great opportunities, and unless though there is incentive requirement for those developers. We've just seen the first release in West Dapto. I don't know about you, but a block of land for $500,000 starting price doesn't sound real affordable to me. We know that the Department of Planning's expectations across our region, 54, 56,000, 58,000 additional properties are going to be needed. And you're absolutely right, unless state government, because sometimes they're the ones that are behind the big releases, unless state government and also councils put the requirements in place, it probably won't happen. Although, can I also say, my early life was marketing. Doesn't make much sense to continue to create a product that nobody can afford. And so eventually, I think the practical reality will turn, but we can't wait that long. We've got a frightening number of people who are homeless. The statistics are horrendous. You heard those earlier. So love the way you think, and yeah, there's lots of options to actively be explored. The critical thing, as I said though, is actually for everybody to own up and say, this is a priority and I want to find solutions. That's why Shoalhaven Council has moved forward. You may have even been at their wonderful big collaboratively DA in a day. They did this big workshop. They got a whole bunch of people in a room together. It was awesome. It was a great example of all of the players coming together to do something creative together.
Something good in the water in Shoalhaven, Blake. There's no doubt about that. We've got a comment from Jackie and then a question. Jackie says, since you mentioned the Canada investment, Future Cities Canada is doing some great stuff. Worth a look, everyone. And then Jackie says, can we look at a new and innovative collaboration method between state and local government so we don't have piecemeal approaches between different community providers and local communities? Is this worth considering, or is this the role of CHIA? So one for you, Michael, or maybe you, Michelle.
I'm happy to talk to that. I think, yes, absolutely, there's a role for that, and it's something that we've been asking for some time. Both state government and local councils already do a lot of strategic planning, so there would be a lot of value in joining that up together, and even developing joint delivery plans so they can look at all the different opportunities for supplying new affordable housing, and to do that with community housing providers and other stakeholders, so that's very well informed.
Thank you. Questions come in. It's a COVID-related question. COVID's just so, it's been so dominant, but it's taught us, I guess, in this brave new world that we've been in, that we often need a third space, whether it's to study, work, educate, or recover in. Should some modern apartments, and affordable, of course, have a room available on each floor for use by residents, which could even extend to allowing ageing in place more? Home care services having a place to use in each building to help keep people in their home. Increasingly rented houses more often. I hope I've done the question justice, but yeah, more spaces created, I guess, to facilitate this new world we're in, where there's more living, working, or educating from home. Any thoughts?
Can I jump in there, Jeremy? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, please. No, please, John.
Well, I was going to say, so I think what we're dealing with at the moment is almost like a two-gear system, where we have this idea that people who are renting and renting units are somehow second class compared to other people who might own or rent a dwelling. And I think COVID has taught us that, particularly which is that great question, if you're educating children, working remotely, recovering from illness, or trying to in some ways, conduct your work, you need some extra space. So I think it's a really good opportunity for us to learn, all of us being positive, about how we need to think about designing buildings differently. And I suppose the adage you would use is, let's rent, not buy. Here's why. So if you're offering buildings that have some great spaces in them, in the bottom of the building, on each floor, and they can extend to things like a large rooftop communal area, you can still entertain and have big family gatherings. You can indeed have your home care nurse come and stay. So things like residential aged care, going into retirement, all of those things are up for grabs. I think COVID's presented us a great opportunity to think about the design of dwellings, not only family friendly, but all sorts of flexible design. I live in a building, I have my own 2 or 3 bedroom unit, and I have access to other spaces on the floor, in the basement, on the roof. That's a great opportunity. And if I get it as a renter, even better. So I think it's a great opportunity and a great question. Thanks, Jeremy.
Some of the other things that we can do is make longer leases the standard as well. And of course, just even in the last 24 hours, many of you may have heard the call to end no fault evictions in New South Wales, and that would be a really good thing.
Thanks, Michelle. We've got a little over 15 minutes. We'd love to get some more questions. It is a thought-provoking subject. It can go in a whole bunch of directions. If it's on your mind, it's probably on the person on the screen next to you, on their mind as well. So please share in the chat room. Coming off what John just said about the amenity, I guess, of affordable homes, someone said they're interested in the concept of affordable housing having to mean reduced amenity. How can we make sure all the A's get addressed? Affordable, accessible, appropriate, adaptable, amenity, and importantly, agency or autonomy over the use of the space. John, you kind of touched on it. Do you or someone else want to talk about all those A's? I think I counted 8 of them.
I'm happy to throw over to anyone, including people beyond the panel. Jeremy, it's a great question.
Maybe we dealt with it in the last question. So
I think, look, we the vast majority of, in fact, I dare say all of our community housing provider members of CHEA, we all have this sort of fundamental premise. We talk about tenancies being blind from the outside. So you should not be able to look at a building and think, oh, they're the people that are paying the cheap rent. They're the ones that might be paying more. No, everybody is entitled to all of those A's. Interestingly, for some of you, compared to the purely private profit-driven property developers, we actually have always been, as community housing providers, in the build-to-rent model, which means it matters to us that we have low maintenance costs. We will sometimes pay more money for materials because they don't then wear down and don't need to be replaced as much, unlike a private developer puts it up, slaps it around, and walks away. 3 years later, the place looks like it's in big need of some help. We simply don't do that. Our mandate as community housing organisations is as much about helping our tenants to sustain their tenancies, which means, so again, our new development in Corrimal, and our wonderful partner in that, Traders in Purple, is on this forum this afternoon. Good afternoon, Tom and Charlie. Worked with us to design it. So we put in ceiling fans. We don't put in air conditioning, for example, because that's more expensive for people to run. Interestingly, at the moment, the councils almost by default require us to make our tenants have clothes dryers, because they won't allow for drying spaces, even where they're hidden from balconies and things. Again, we put in electric vehicle charging stations in Corrimal. There's a whole raft of things that we can and do. And our standard at the Housing Trust, not only do we have a vision that we articulate as a decent home for everyone, but our property standard in design, in livability, in access, in equity, is would I feel happy and proud if my mum lived here. And thank you, Lynn. You could be my mum any day.
And mine. A quick response to the amenity from someone in the room. Kate says updates to the apartment design guideline under the new design and place SEP are expected to require an area for study and offices. So there is some thinking and action happening in this area, which is great news. Thank you for that update, Kate. A question from Charles. He's asked me to ask, what strategies would the panel consider to inform and educate the wider community, including politicians and other stakeholders, on the importance of social and affordable housing? There seems to be a great chasm between how well the industry understands the issues and implications and understanding of others more broadly. So it's that informing and educating the wider community on how important this whole issue is. Might be yours to take, I think, Michelle.
I was going to handball to John. Look, it is a major problem. Can I state the obvious? This is a start. Our increasing conversations. It is the case that when 2 or 3 people turn up at a local politician's office, they actually do pay attention. They actually really do. I have never seen as much media commentary about the crisis as what we currently have. Adam's organisation is working through business chambers. We've got Shelter at an umbrella level, CHEA, of course, as well. We've got, in a perverse kind of a way, I was somewhat encouraged. I was at a very expensive corporate luncheon last year, and was in a law firm, and the partners were complaining about their double degree educated kids, like couldn't afford to move out because they couldn't afford to fund it. Yeah, well, welcome to the world of the rest of us. But the reality is we still have our federal, and I am completely bipartisan, so I will call it, and those of you that know me, where there is good policy, I will name it and I'll celebrate it. And where there's an absence, I will name it and I will say it's not good enough. You know, we have a federal housing and homelessness minister who says repeatedly publicly that the federal government's priority is ownership. And yet, if you're under the age of 45 in Australia today, you've only got a 50-50 chance of ever owning a home. And if you're in the lucky group that do manage to buy, you'll be waiting for your mum and dad, basically, to leave you something. So, you know, we have got to come back to, I think it was Jackie who made the point, having a home is actually a human right. Australia is a signatory to the United Nations declarations of the human rights, and it is there. So it is about every conversation. It is about jumping on social media if that's your thing. It is about having an email. It is about asking for evidence. And being proactive. You know, it is the case, and not so long ago, probably, I was like many people, I didn't pay too much attention to what happened in my local council, but geez, it makes a difference. It really, really does.
Jackie does make a point. She's on fire in the chat room. Let's put pressure on the 9 ministers for housing in Australia to get together and produce a new innovative policy. Shouldn't be too much to ask, you would think.
We don't, Jackie, we don't actually have a housing strategy nationally, and the New South Wales government produced the first ever housing strategy and plan in this state. Only what, John, 12, 18 months ago? Not even 12 months ago, within the last 12 months. First ever.
1 year.
Quick question for Adam. We've heard that some organisations in this region are actually buying property for staff because they can't find anywhere to live. Have you heard of that being the case?
Yeah, look, we have, and I've spoken to a number of my members, and they're unfortunately competing against each other on a routine basis in manners like what you just described, and sometimes having to spend their way out of problems just to keep the doors open. That's all happening out there, Jeremy, and I guess I just probably concur with what Michelle said, and there's a question there about politics, where I think, unfortunately, I liken this issue to climate change. I think politicians are going to be very slow to come and solve it because of the level of vested interest in the housing market. It's going to require a lot of noise from us collectively, and that's where, to Michelle's point, employers are on board, you know, and at the other end of the spectrum, you've got unions on board, you've got great organisations like John's. I think we've got to all make the same noise and make it very clear that inaction won't be acceptable.
Great answer. We've got a question from Rebecca, who's happy to ask live, and it's about the amount of time it takes for the wheels to turn, even when the decisions are good decisions to produce more affordable housing. Are you with us, Rebecca?
Yes, sorry, I had to unmute myself. Thank you. I've got a bit of context to my question and then the question. My name's Rebecca and I work at Shoalhaven Council. But I also have a personal interest in affordable housing. I work with sort of land rezonings and completely take Blake's point. However, land rezonings, and we seem to talk a lot about how new development can fill this affordable housing gap. And my question is around, well, what is existing and how can we better make use of existing development? A long time in rezoning land and building new land. Building new homes. So yeah, I noticed an example of a Waverley Council reusing a building. There's also a question about, there's an announcement recently that the Steelworks Hotel in Port Kembla, near where I grew up, will be redeveloped for affordable housing, and it's an existing heritage building. There's opportunities in using existing buildings because they already fit within the character of areas, which is what a lot of people are concerned about. And then sort of my other question is, we have existing rental units available, and they're often demolished and replaced with new buildings that don't provide any rental accommodation. So it's a form of gentrification, and I'm just wondering what's happening in these spaces, and yeah, how can we sort of highlight more case studies that are using our existing spaces, which are usually very well located to services and won't take as long as rezoning land and building new homes. Thank you.
John, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah. Funnily enough, just to bring it into context, great question and insights, Rebecca. A few of us in the room were actually at a property council event this morning. So New South Wales Property Council, it was actually to do with the mayoral elections in New South Wales, for the city of Sydney. So the 6 candidates all spoke, and this very issue got touched on a lot. How come we can't use existing office buildings? So in the case of Sydney, no doubt the same in Wollongong and Newcastle, the call on office accommodation has changed since COVID. Surely there must be some opportunity, at least in the short term, to free up some of these existing buildings. And your point about existing and compatible character is a great one. Surely there must be some ways. I think the great thing is the fact that people like yourself and everyone is thinking innovation. What can we say that's new? What have we learned from COVID? There's some great ideas out there, but that's certainly a great one. Why should we think that it's only brand new stock that has to be considered? What can we do for existing stock? What can we do not just to make it more affordable, but there are often examples where, and I can think about the New South Wales government's done this a few times with its own buildings, we can convert what were previously inaccessible, what they call 3-story walk-ups, and make them as good as ground floor by clipping on the side of the building lift shafts. Now, not the most award-winning thing in the world, but goodness me, it makes a massive difference to people, not just in terms of adaptability, but affordability. It's taking an existing building, making it more adaptable and accessible. I think there's examples like that we need to lean into more. May not be, as I say, award-winning architecturally, but certainly gets the job done very quickly. So no, I think more of that thinking is what we need. Thanks, Rebecca.
Can I just jump in and add? I absolutely agree. I think that we need to be thinking about all possible solutions, but this is where I think having clear strategies within both state government and councils so they can look at all the possible options and work through. In some cases, councils may need to look at some of their planning controls to make that adaptation possible. I also know that some councils, I think it's Canterbury, Bankstown, have done a really good piece of work where they've looked at really low density areas and how secondary dwellings can help with supplying more homes and more affordable homes. So I think sharing that information more is also helpful.
My caveat, and I recently gave evidence to the New South Wales Parliamentary Inquiry on this very issue, basically what I said was it's still got to be fit for purpose. So we cannot expect people to live in converted office buildings that are dog boxes without fresh air, without suitable bathrooms arrangements, so it's got to be fit for purpose. We can't have temporary housing at the expense of permanent housing. We've got to be very clear about that. So what is temporary and how long is temporary and how long does it, is it for? And the other thing we've got to be able to do is in addition to all of that, actually do the investment in more supply. And for that supply to be explicitly, as Blake and others were saying, specifically targeted and exclusively for the purpose of affordable rental. We can't just make supply available and imagine that it's actually going to be enough. It's got to be targeted. To John's wonderful example about the external stair arrangements, that's on local council, easy as, tomorrow, if New South Wales Parliament was sitting and they wanted to, they could immediately change. There's one of the affordable housing regulations at the moment says a new developer can get some concessions, some height, a few more units, a bit less parking if they're doing an affordable housing project. At the moment, those units that are produced only have to be affordable rental for 10 years. They could immediately make it 20, or they could immediately make it in perpetuity. Immediately. This is not difficult. Some of these things can make a difference straight away, and it comes back to the question around will and commitment, and it sits with us to have those conversations.
Before we get to our final question from Yumi Lee from the Older Women's Network, a couple of very quick comments from the floor. Lynn, our Housing Trust tenant, one of our guests, she says she has all of those A's provided, the 8 A's that I mentioned earlier. And a response to Charles, hearing from the tenants themselves is critical to breaking through. Well done to the Housing Trust for ensuring we heard from 2 great tenants today. Thank you so much, Luke and Lynn, for sharing your stories. So, the final question of the day is yours, Yumi Lee.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It's been really interesting and helpful. My concern is with the demographic of Australia, the fact that we have an aging population, and therefore there is an increasing need for social and affordable housing to be fully accessible, also in recognition of the fact that we have people with disability. If we do not make all builds accessible, we are, creating further discrimination against those who are unable to access social and affordable housing. And we know the New South Wales government is not going to adopt the highest standards for accessibility. So what is the position of community housing providers in relation to this? Will they commit to making all new builds 100% accessible?
Well, I can speak for the Housing Trust. So our minimum standard is silver livability, which is the base kind of standard. So that's slightly wider doorways. You just simply build with more reinforcing in the walls so that if you need to, you can add grab rails and things later on. One of the difficulties though, as John wonderfully pointed out in the same conversation just recently, one of the difficulties that we have in the Illawarra in particular, and it's different in different places, is where there is a gradient on the land, so where the land slopes, or in our case where it floods, to be able to level out the land, put in basements, do what we need to do, not within the home, within the envelope, is relatively straightforward. The problem with access is getting up to the front door or getting into the garage. I couldn't agree with you more with regards to it should be minimum standard everywhere all the time, but we need to find a solution around the additional cost that can impose around, leveling a site, moving soil around, doing something. At the moment, for me, for the Housing Trust, for us to create a home, I need to build a home from scratch. I need to deliver it at least 35% cheaper than a commercial property developer so that I can rent it affordably. If I'm then needing to deal with flood risks and sloping land, and that's going to cost extra amount of dollars, I am fearful. We must not give up on the expectation, but I am fearful without government support or without some sort of additional contribution from somewhere, I'm not sure how we can do it. It's much more straightforward. Again, in an apartment building, it's easy. We've usually got basements and things. So on those, unequivocally, it should just be standard straight away. Gets more complex when you're talking about things like townhouses and the like.
Thanks, Michelle. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a bit of a stickler for finishing on time, and we're just about there. Could you thank the panel, Michelle, Adam, Michael, John, and of course, Lynn and Luke with a thumbs up. Thank you. I'll quickly throw back to Michelle from the Housing Trust, the creator of the Homes for Local Heroes, just to say a few closing comments and thank yous.
Thanks, Jeremy. And look, first and foremost, thank you for your time. Thank you particularly again to Lynn and to Luke and to my other colleagues. We absolutely believe in our vision at the Housing Trust, as indeed, and now I'm speaking as the chair of our peak body, Michael and Caitlin and others, and John. We are committed. We are not going to walk away from this. It is not going to get any easier. It is not going to get any better. Together, though, we absolutely know that we can and we will make a difference. There is nothing that our community and that our country can't do, can't resolve when we come together with the best of intent and a can-do attitude. So I would encourage you again, if you've not already contacted your candidates, if you don't contact any of the others, if you're in Shell Harbour or in Wollongong, at least contact the mayoral candidates and say, what are you doing? The vast majority of them are standing for re-election. There's a couple of newies on the ticket, but what are you doing? Let them know that this matters. Again, thank you, and we look forward to continuing to work with you and to make a safe, secure, affordable home the reality for everyone, because we all need it, and we can't do anything in life without it. So thank you. Stay safe and well, and best wishes.
And a final thank you for those behind the scenes who've made this possible, the team from Essential Media, from the Housing Trust, from Chia and from Waples. To the guests again, to all of you, thank you.